Tsuyoshi Tsukushiro, a humble dungeon cleaner, stumbled upon a mysterious golden ring that transported him to a world of beast folk. After narrowly escaping a divine punishment and discovering the ring's incredible powers, he embarked on a journey to become stronger, heal his injured sister, and navigate the challenges of two intertwined worlds. Armed with new skills and a mighty hammer, Tsuyoshi Tsukushiro had to level up, master his abilities, and confront dangerous enemies in both his original world and the fantastical realm of the beast folk. A powerful, intense red energy pulsated violently, interspersed with searing streaks of purple-white lightning. Shouting voices echoed, repeatedly demanding an execution, commanding that he should be killed. Lying amidst the electrical discharge and the glowing red ground was a young man, bound and seemingly injured. He looked around in a state of confusion, questioning himself about how his situation had devolved to that point. He tried desperately to make sense of his surroundings, wondering where he was. The source of the commanding voices was revealed to be a massive, imposing beast folk, clad in rudimentary armor. Raising a powerful clawed arm, the creature delivered a loud, forceful declaration, stating that the next one to receive divine punishment would be the lowly human who had intruded upon their sacred land. He explained that for thousands of years their territory, the sacred land of the beast folk, had remained isolated from the outside world. The powerful beast folk bellowed that for the first time in their history a human had managed to trespass upon them, and he classified this act as an act of war. He condemned the human for breaking their covenant and commanded that the divine punishment be brought down upon him. The bound young man remembered with desperation that he had been in a cave just a moment before, as the enraged cries of divine punishment rained down upon him. Sweat beaded on his face, his expression one of horror, as he wondered if he was truly going to perish in that strange world. The narrative then jumped back in time to 5 hours ago. Under a starry night and a glowing full moon, a man, Tsuyoshi, was walking toward what looked like a food stall or vehicle parked outdoors. A voice calls out to him, urging Tsuyoshi to hurry up and finish eating. Another man, seemingly a leader or older colleague, addressed Tsuyoshi. He told him not to stray once they were inside, explaining that 2 other cleaning teams were working besides theirs that day. He cautioned Tsuyoshi that if he slacked off, he would not even get any scrap metal. Tsuyoshi, the young man, was sitting and ravenously eating a bowl of noodles with a look of slight annoyance, asking why so many people were coming to a mere C-rank cave. The older man sitting nearby responded that it was the time they lived in, more cleaners were showing up, and clarified that they were not heroes. Suddenly, the older man's expression hardened. He sharply exclaimed, telling Tsuyoshi to get ready because the heroes were coming. He then suddenly rose and announced that they should go. Tsuyoshi, still stuffing his face with noodles, hastily agreed before being pulled away. One of the cleaners walked away from the food stall, carrying a shovel. He felt a shiver run down his spine, noting that even if it was just a C-rank cave, it still gave him chills when he got closer. He lamented that if a C-rank felt so chilling, he could not even begin to imagine the terror of A-rank or S-rank caves. As he and the other cleaners began their work standing in the portal of the cave, one of the others commented that it was odd since there were only a few darklings there. Just then, a foot covered with metal armor came out from the portal. It finally revealed that the 2 heroes emerged, clad in radiant golden armor, glowing with a bright aura of power. One man looked pleased and said they were lucky to get a reward so easily, suggesting they had come out pretty well. The woman next to him agreed faintly. As the heroes walked past the cleaners, one of them sighed, reflecting that heroes were indeed cool, and he wished he could become one to earn such a substantial amount of money. The older cleaner sharply told him to stop grumbling, reminding him that he became a cleaner because he had failed the awakening test. The 2 heroes, their golden armor shining, continued past the group of cleaners. One of the cleaners then thanked the female hero and asked if they could go inside already. The female hero, tall and striking with long red hair, gave her permission. The young man, Tsuyoshi Tokushiro, reflected on his situation. He explained that after the heroes subdued the darklings in the cave, cleaners, commonly known as trash collectors, came in to collect the leftovers, emphasizing that they were completely unrelated to the heroes. Cleaners and heroes lived in different worlds. He held his shovel and stood in the cave entrance, his silhouette surrounded by the continuing golden aura of the entrance or portal, and thought to himself how he had failed the awakening test because of his physical constitution. Yet he had also wanted to be a hero. Once inside the cave, one of the cleaners observed that it was a ruined cave, and not very big since it was only a C-rank. The older man commanded them to work quickly, stating they did not have much time, and reminding them that the cave would close in 4 hours, so they needed to finish up and gather there. Tsuyoshi acknowledged the order. He began digging through the wreckage, only to be shocked when something emerged from the ground. He struck something and excitedly discovered a piece of discarded armor, realizing it was a fragment of a shield. The older man, seeing his find, chuckled that this was a good sign, and that the fragment was worth some money. He then added a somewhat callous remark to Tsuyoshi, saying it seemed like his parents in heaven were watching over him. Tsuyoshi smiled and said that might be true, and decided to search a little deeper inside. The older man called out a reminder not to forget that they would meet up in 3.5 hours. Tsuyoshi, now deeper in the cave, acknowledged the reminder and muttered to himself that the good stuff was usually deeper, so he should keep going. 3.5 hours later, Tsuyoshi looked worried and exhausted as he continued digging. He found it strange that there was nothing else there, thinking to himself that if all he had was a single shield fragment, that was not good. The older man's voice echoed from a distance, calling out to Tsuyoshi that it was almost time to meet up. Tsuyoshi hastily replied that he was nearly done. Tsuyoshi mentally worried that the fragment he found would not even cover one day of Karina's medical expenses, realizing he desperately needed to hurry and find something more valuable. He noticed a round structure which he identified as a well. He sensed something there, believing he smelled treasure. He questioned himself why there would be a well inside the cave, then rationalized that since it looked dried up, there might be something valuable inside. He thought that if he could find some undamaged equipment, it might cover a week of Karina's medical expenses. Tsuyoshi glanced down into the well, his eyes drawn to the shimmering object below. At the bottom of the well, Tsuyoshi found a skeletal hand still clutching a ring, which was glowing faintly. Tsuyoshi cautiously descended into the narrow, dark, dry well. He realized it was a corpse left behind, seemingly unnoticed by the heroes until he finally picked up the golden ring. He looked closely at the ring which had symbols engraved on it. He exclaimed in excitement that he had found a rare item, a ring. Tsuyoshi rejoiced, knowing that this kind of equipment usually had some small status-boosting effect, but more importantly, it sold for a great price. He celebrated, thinking he had made a fortune. Tsuyoshi was very excited and decided to wear the ring for now and have its level checked by Mr. Nakazato later. He knew he had to hurry and regroup, silently thanking his ancestors. He slipped the ring onto his finger and immediately a surge of dazzling light erupted. Tsuyoshi gasped as he felt an intense, painful sensation spreading through his hand and arm, exclaiming in surprise and asking what the ring was doing to him. A notification window materialized before him, displaying the message that the boundless ring had recognized him as its owner. From then on, the boundless ring could not be removed or have its ownership changed, and the boundless passage would open shortly. Tsuyoshi looked around frantically, asking whose voice that was. As he spoke, a swirling bright yellow portal began to open on the floor of the well beneath him, leaving him completely bewildered and questioning what it was. A terrified Tsuyoshi yelled for help, as the intensifying golden yellow swirling portal began to pull him in. Tsuyoshi's voice echoed from outside the well, where the other cleaners were gathering among the ruins. One of them turned and asked if that had been Tsuyoshi's voice. The older man noticed Tsuyoshi was missing, and questioned where he was, as he had been there just a moment ago. The other cleaner concluded that Tsuyoshi probably went to search another area. Another cleaner commented that Tsuyoshi was certainly giving it his all, unfortunately not succeeding in becoming a hero. He decided they still had time and should wait for him. Meanwhile, Tsuyoshi was forcefully pulled down into the swirling light, his hands and shovel flailing as he was engulfed in the bright yellow torrent. When he regained consciousness, he found himself captured by the beast folk, standing before an altar as one of the criminals scheduled to receive divine punishment. He observed the scene, a large weapon-like object resting on a high altar, surrounded by beast folk, all under a pulsing red glow and crackling with powerful blue-white lightning. He realized that the divine punishment referred to a terrifying lightning strike that would fall upon the altar. He concluded that this place seemed to be a sacred land for the beast folk, and wondered if he had been sent there directly from that well. The Beast King, a massive figure with glowing red eyes, sat on a spiked throne and ordered the ceremony to begin. The orc leader told his kin that 3 major criminals would be executed that day. He introduced the first criminal, one of their own, and revealed the crime, selling confidential information about their territory to the despised elves and humans. Their fellow beast folk tied up and kneeling in the dust, and the surrounding beast folk cried out in anger, calling the kneeling figure a traitor and expressing their pity. They demanded that divine punishment be brought upon the traitor, chanting the command for divine punishment. The beast folk leader declared that by the Beast King's command the criminals shall face divine punishment. The first victim was then dragged away to the altar. All of a sudden, the traitorous beast folk was slammed down onto the altar. The beast folk leader declared that the hammer of the divine king, surrounded by bolts of punishing lightning, would crush all sins. He emphasized that no one had ever escaped from that altar, the domain of divine punishment. Immediately, a torrent of powerful, blinding blue-white lightning descended onto the captive beast folk. The first criminal was struck hard by lightning, and the pain was evident as the electric current consumed and destroyed its body. Screams of divine punishment erupted again, along with the renewed command to bring it down upon the traitor. The orcish leader, carrying a large sword, pointed towards Tsuyoshi and announced that the next to receive divine punishment would be the lowly human who had intruded on their sacred land. The first human in history to wander into the holy land of the beast folk, which had been isolated from the outside world for thousands of years. He reiterated that this was a declaration of war and commanded divine punishment upon the human who broke their covenant. Tsuyoshi was lifted bodily by a massive beast folk. He frantically begged them to wait, insisting it was a misunderstanding and that he had just accidentally lost his way, pleading with them to stop. He cried out that he was not one of the humans they sought, and that his sister was waiting for him, desperately asking for help. The beast folk roared, exclaiming that it was enough, and held Tsuyoshi firmly. Tsuyoshi, terrified and with tears in his eyes, internally screamed that there was no way he could die there. Tsuyoshi mentally grasped at his reasons to live, thinking of Karina and his dream of becoming a hero as he was thrown onto the red glowing altar. He was overcome by the realization of how things had gone so terribly wrong. The beast folk leader yelled at him, calling him an insect, and demanded to know how a mere human could have defeated the great beast folk, implying one of the other criminals. Surrounding beast folk shouted for him to die and prayed he would become ashes in divine punishment. The command rang out to bring down divine punishment upon the sinner, while Tsuyoshi was kneeling on the ground. Tsuyoshi desperately cried out internally that he could not die in a place like that. He moved his feet as fast as he could to dodge the divine punishment. As the blinding blue-white lightning, the divine punishment, descended toward him, the last thing seen was the massive surge of electricity striking between his legs. The massive orc-like beast folk who had Tsuyoshi restrained along with the others looked on in stunned silence. One of them wondered aloud if Tsuyoshi had dodged the bolt. A cat-eared female beast folk watched with a look of surprise and concern. The beast folk leader, equally shocked, asked if he had avoided the lightning of divine punishment, calling the feat unprecedented. Even the king looked at him with an impossible curiosity. In a defiant, intense moment, Tsuyoshi stood up on the altar, his posture lean and tense, and shouted that he refused to die there. He had not been vaporized by the lightning and stood unharmed and enraged. Suddenly, Tsuyoshi screamed as blue lightning coursed through him, passing from his body into the ground. The beast folk leader regained his composure and laughed, questioning who said the lightning of divine punishment only strikes once before commanding the next strike. As the beast folks chanted for divine punishment, the massive bolt of energy struck Tsuyoshi once more. The cat-eared female beast folk watched with a melancholic expression, muttering, "What a futile struggle." Lying on the ground enveloped in the lightning, Tsuyoshi knew he was dying and struggled to accept it. Then the ring on his finger, the boundless ring, began to glow intensely with a brilliant golden red light. A virtual window materialized at the top of the scene, declaring that the boundless ring divine selection system was activating. Golden energy crackled around Tsuyoshi's body as it convulsed on the altar. A secondary message materialized, indicating that activation and system authentication were complete, and that body repair and construction of the ultimate physique were commencing. The Beast King murmured a questioning sound, his expression focused and intense. The lightning continued its assault, striking the altar and Tsuyoshi's body once more. The Beast Folk leader looked down in shock and disbelief, questioning whether Tsuyoshi was still alive. As the torrent of lightning continued to strike the altar, Tsuyoshi's silhouette was briefly seen standing, suspended in the electricity. A new virtual message materialized, declaring that the ultimate physique was being constructed and was 15% complete. The large Beast Folk leader looked at the spectacle in sheer disbelief, shouting his confusion. Tsuyoshi's body remained on the altar, continuously being bombarded by the powerful blue-white lightning bolts. A new message materialized in the virtual window, stating that it was constructing the ultimate physique, currently at 40% scanning, and initiating the skill Divine Eye. Even as Tsuyoshi bore the brunt of the lightning, a faint awareness stirred within him, a sense of an external summons, a call meant for him. Despite his burnt body, he still slowly walked to the altar. Weak and wounded, he continued his ascent up the stairs, head bowed as lightning repeatedly struck him. The hammer of the Beastfolk King, crackling with blue lightning, hung menacingly above the terrified warrior. Tsuyoshi continued his ascent, unheeding, even as a powerful jolt of blue lightning struck his back. His head remained bowed, seemingly impervious and completely undisturbed by the impact. The construction process progressed with the implementation of system updates. It was 60% complete, and the system was inputting the skills Divine Consciousness Inventory and Absolute Duplication. The onlookers, beastfolk among them, stirred nervously. Tsuyoshi's form, still crackling with lightning, began to look visibly more muscular and defined as the process continued. The system has been updated, now showing that the construction of the ultimate physique is 80% complete. The beastfolk leader's eyes widened in horror. He whispered that it was impossible, and noted that, other than the Divine King himself, no one had ever gotten that close to the hammer of the Divine King. Tsuyoshi, standing near the Beast King, expressed his surprise, questioning if Tsuyoshi intended to lift the hammer of the Divine King. The massive lightning surrounding Tsuyoshi's body briefly coalesced, and he spoke, directing his words seemingly to the hammer itself, asking if it was the one calling for him, and why it called him. The construction system has completed its process, resulting in the ultimate structure being built. The system is now inputting the special status Chosen One with 100% confirmation. A colossal surge of power erupted from the altar as the process concluded. unleashing waves of raw energy that caused one of the beast folk to exclaim with awe. Tsuyoshi's transformation culminated. He stood fully upright on the altar, his physique now heavily muscled and defined, the ropes binding him having been torn away by the raw electrical energy. His eyes glowed with the same vibrant blue-white light as the divine punishment, and he let out a shout of raw newfound power. Imposing, intense beast folk resembling orcs stood in a challenging stance. Then a blinding, explosive surge of blue, crackling energy erupted between them, dominating the immediate space with its sheer power. Amidst the chaos of the spiraling energy, a declaration resonated from within, acknowledging its summons as the divine hammer. Fierce blue energy converged, forming around a hand that grasped the power. The energy surged upon contact, and the hand clenched, channeling the immense force. Now radiating a deep purple, the fist tightened its grip on a formidable weapon, likely a hammer, as blue energy crackled around it. A resolute declaration was formed, ready to unleash its newfound power. Tsuyoshi Tsukishiro gripped the newly acquired hammer with intense effort, his eyes glowing with electric blue light as he exerted his power, a surge of energy washing over him. The divine hammer itself was enormous, crackling with potent blue electricity. Upon claiming the divine hammer, a system notification box materialized, declaring the hero's ascent to level 3. The hammer's current unlocked power stood at a mere 0%, its true potential veiled by the hero's insufficient capability. Its special effects remained unknown, awaiting the hero's skill to be confirmed. The message urged the hero to cultivate strength, for only then could the divine hammer unleash its full, awe-inspiring power. A woman beast folk with prominent cat ears and long orange hair watched in utter shock, sweat beading on her skin, as a human lifted the divine hammer. The beast folk leader, a fierce-looking, large individual with long hair and prominent tusks, expressed disbelief and outrage. He declared it impossible that a mere human managed to lift the divine hammer, asserting that they could not allow a human to touch their sacred divine hammer. The angry beast folk leader continued his furious outburst, emphasizing that even the great beast king couldn't lift the divine hammer, and questioning how a mere human could manage it. He recalled the legend that whoever lifts the divine hammer shall become the leader of the beastmen, concluding that the current situation must be some kind of mistake. Meanwhile, Tsuyoshi Tsukishiro looked down at a transparent blue status screen floating before him. The screen displayed his stats, skills, and inventory, with his name and current level 3 visible, confirming his acquisition of the divine hammer. As he observed his status, he felt a mighty rush, noting that he felt much stronger somehow. He was also surprised to see that he had already reached level 3. The sight of the floating glowing status panel caused one of the other beast folk to question if this was the divine selection system. Tsuyoshi Tsukishiro, still bare-chested and with a bandage on his cheek, intently examined the transparent screen, holding the divine hammer at his side as he clearly pondered the new system and his unexpected level up. The enraged beast leader charged towards Tsuyoshi, his massive form and long hair blurring with motion. With a thunderous roar, he warned him to keep his filthy hands off the divine hammer, and the ground trembled with his fury. Another group of beast folk nearby recognized him, exclaiming that he was their great general Roga, and that surely he would not allow a human to act so presumptuously. They pleaded with him to help them reclaim the pride of the beastmen. General Roga continued to glare down at Tsuyoshi, accusing him of using tricks. He expressed disbelief that Tsuyoshi not only escaped the divine punishment, but also lifted the divine hammer. With a foreboding glare and his eyes glowing blue with intensity, General Roga concluded his furious command to Tsuyoshi by telling him to return the hammer quietly and accept his punishment. Suddenly, a new notification from the system popped up in front of Tsuyoshi, announcing that the passive skill Divine Eye was activated. The use was explained as being able to check detailed information about any item by focusing on it, with a cooldown of 0 seconds. Tsuyoshi was surprised by his new passive skill Divine Eye. As Tsuyoshi gazed at Roga, a new panel appeared, revealing the beast folk leader's formidable details. His name was Roga, a general of level 84, a beastman warrior wielding a grade A Zanbato greatsword. Tsuyoshi marveled at his newfound ability to see opponent information, wondering if this extraordinary feature was the rumored Divine Eye. Roga, sensing Tsuyoshi's unwavering gaze, braced himself. A powerful figure with a large sheathed weapon strapped to his back, he scoffed at Tsuyoshi. The lowly human dared to challenge him, and he possessed a surprising amount of courage. Roga agreed, pointing his sword at Tsuyoshi and promising him a swift death. Tsuyoshi, however, quickly altered his demeanor, frantically waving his hand and stammering that it was all a misunderstanding. He desperately realized that he was a level 3, and there was no way he was fighting a level 84 warrior. Roga, in a fit of dramatic flair, roared for him to shut up and take his medicine, or rather, his grade A Zanbato. He then proceeded to draw the colossal sword from his back, a weapon so massive it likely had its own zip code, and swung it down towards Tsuyoshi. Poor Tsuyoshi, whose hands flew up in a desperate and frankly futile attempt to fend off the colossal attack, pleaded for General Roga just to listen. Clearly, Roga's hearing was as selective as a teenager's when asked to do chores. The cat-eared woman, observing the brewing storm, knew in her heart that the human was toast. She recalled General Roga, one of the Beast King's 5 great generals, an intimidating opponent even amongst their own kind. She did not doubt that a mere human would be bisected with a single, elegant swipe. She thought it would be an enviable way to go. General Roga brought his colossal sword down with immense force, aiming for a swift end to the conflict. The swing created a powerful shockwave, indicated by a massive visual effect, as the blade collided with something at the bottom of the panel. In a surprising turn of events, Sueshi managed to use the divine hammer to block the devastating blow quickly. The impact generated a shower of bright orange sparks and fragments as the Grade A Zombato connected with the divine hammer. Sueshi was pushed down to one knee, the force of the strike causing the ground to crack and crumble around his leg as he strained against the overwhelming power of General Roga's attack. Despite the near-impossible feat of survival, Sueshi was clearly struggling, his face contorted in effort. He expressed utter shock that he actually blocked the attack. He then realized the incredible durability of his new weapon. Even though his hands were numb from the impact, he exclaimed that the hammer was incredibly sturdy. General Roga found himself utterly dumbfounded. The human's ability to parry his quick slash and for their body to absorb the impact using only a hammer defied all expectations. Refusing to be deterred by this unexpected durability, Roga prepared another massive attack, telling Sueshi he was lucky the hammer saved his life once, but promising it wouldn't happen a second time. Sueshi, desperately trying to avoid being flattened, yelled back that it was all a huge misunderstanding. Sweating nervously and gripping his life-saving hammer, Sueshi pleaded with the enraged general, explaining that he wasn't even from that world, and begging him just to hear him out. Roga, however, was in no mood for conversation. He roared that there was nothing to hear and launched another ferocious strike at the frantic hero. General Roga's second strike didn't directly hit Sueshi, but instead, Roga managed to get a grip on Sueshi with one hand. Sueshi was yanked up off the ground, looking distressed as Roga let out a triumphant shout. Roga declared his plan to toss Sueshi into the sky and finish him off with a technique called Earthquake Shaker. Sueshi was mid-air and being spun around, entirely in the Beastman General's power. Tossed violently, Sueshi activated Absolute Replication. This new ability allowed him to sense an opponent's heart and replicate one skill, with a 0-second cooldown. However, only one skill could be stored at a time, replaced by new replications. Despite his peril, Sueshi gained a game-changing power. Cast high, Sueshi grappled with his newfound ability, Absolute Replication. The cryptic instruction to sense the opponent's heart with his hand suddenly crystallized. In other words, he needed to make physical contact with General Ryoga's chest. With a daring burst of desperation, Sueshi managed to extend his hand in the midst of the violent spin and lightly touch the chest of the enormous Beastman General. A pink aura and sparkling light effects surrounded General Ryoga, and large stylized roses appeared, completely contrasting the general's fierce expression. The general seemed momentarily taken aback, or perhaps even pleasantly surprised by the unexpected contact. Sueshi, having achieved the necessary contact, was then seen flying through the air, presumably tossed as Ryoga had planned. Sueshi was thrown into the air, and as he flew, multiple skill cards materialized around him. He was utterly overwhelmed, exclaiming that there were so many that it was impossible to choose just one among them. Below, General Ryoga shouted in confusion, demanding to know what Sueshi was doing to him. With a thunderous declaration, he hoisted his colossal sword, unleashing his ultimate assault. He roared, promising an earth-shattering blow that would forever alter the fate of the battlefield. As Ryoga prepared to unleash his attack, Sueshi quickly focused on a skill card. This card, labeled Skill, which is Heaven Shaker with a 360-second cooldown, describes a warrior's attack skill. It was fully replicable, but its true power remained unknown due to Sueshi's current lack of a profession and weapon. Sueshi reasoned that it seemed compatible with his hammer and decided to go with that one. Immediately, a triumphant system message flashed, declaring that the skill Heaven Shaker had been fully replicated. The replicated skill enveloped Sueshi in a blue, swirling energy. However, even with the new skill, Sueshi was still hurtling away while Ryuga was shouting desperately that he couldn't afford to die there. General Ryuga concluded the naming of his technique Heaven Shaker, bringing the massive sword down upon what appeared to be the now replicated skill target. General Ryuga froze mid-air, witnessing the human below replicate his signature blue energy attack. His shock was palpable, and he was wondering how this impossible feat was occurring. The two attacks collided in a brilliant flash of blue energy and force, shattering the ground and sending fragments of rock flying in all directions. The beastmen and the cat-eared woman froze, their jaws practically on the floor. Even the woman herself stared, utterly flabbergasted, as if someone had just told her that a turnip could win a beauty pageant. In the next moment, the general's massive body was sent crashing into the ground, kicking up a huge cloud of dust and debris, having been struck by the replicated Heaven Shaker skill. His face showed a look of pain and absolute surprise as he hit the earth. General Ryuga, hit the ground, looking utterly perplexed. He mumbled to himself, finding the replicated attack strangely off. It had not hurt Tsuyoshi at all. In fact, he experienced a bizarre, almost pleasant sensation. Meanwhile, Tsuyoshi was already receiving a new system notification. It stated that due to being level 3, without a profession and unable to use a weapon, no damage was inflicted on the opponent. He was advised to improve his abilities to increase effectiveness. Tsuyoshi stared blankly at the notification screen. In stark contrast to the intense battle, General Ryuga, a formidable figure, was sprawled on the ground, defeated. Meanwhile, Tsuyoshi stood remarkably unharmed, a small blue informational window hovering beside him. General Ryuga quickly got back up, furious at the realization that his own technique had hit him but was completely unharmed. His eyes blazing with fury, he screamed at Tsuyoshi that he was a filthy human and asked how he dared to humiliate him. At last, an immense, unseen force had witnessed enough of the escalating conflict. A vast crimson field of pure energy erupted and swept across the terrain, as a thunderous voice boomed declaring the fight was over, sweeping past the stunned General Ryuga. The powerful red energy field originated from the Beast King himself. A chorus of beastmen realized what was happening, exclaiming that it was the Beast King, and that the Beast King himself was expected to take action. The cat-eared woman stood frozen, a peculiar blend of awe and sheer terror painting her face, as she found herself muttering the name of the Beast King. A shockwave of pure force accompanied the energy, impacting the surroundings and throwing debris into the air. Blown backward by the sheer force of Beast King's power, Tsuyoshi's teeth gnashed against the relentless wind. He managed to pry one eye open just in time to witness the unfolding chaos as a final, lingering cloud of dust and air engulfed him. The entire immediate vicinity was bathed in the red glow of the Beast King's power. The dust and smoke cleared, revealing the colossal form of the Beast King, who had been hidden until now. His presence was so overwhelming, but the Beast King itself immediately knelt, head bowed in submission, surrounded by the powerful red aura. In fact, all the beastmen, including the cat-eared woman, had instinctively struck with awe and reverence. It made the very air around them hum like a forgotten refrigerator. The Beast King, who knelt in front of Tsuyoshi, spoke, acknowledging Tsuyoshi's possession of the Divine Hammer. He declared that it seemed the human had truly been chosen by the Divine Hammer, concluding that this may indeed be a sign from the gods. Tsuyoshi, still clutching the hammer, looked up in stunned surprise. The Beast King, an immense presence, towered over him, gripping his shoulders and filling the space. The Beast King, who had a strong and conventionally handsome appearance with long white hair and red eyes, smiled slightly and stated that for hundreds and thousands of years, no one had been able to lift the Divine Hammer, proclaiming that Tsuyoshi was the first. He addressed his fellow beastmen, announcing that no one could ever lift the Divine Hammer, yet Tsuyoshi, a human, had done it. General Ryuga, still in disbelief, looked up in astonishment. The beastmen audience watched in silence, their serious expressions suggesting they were deep in thought, as if trying to recall whether they'd left the oven on at home. The Beast King then continued, theorizing that if Tsuyoshi truly was the future leader of the beastmen, then they should allow him time to grow. He gestured toward Tsuyoshi, emphasizing his choice. Murmurs rippled through the beastmen crowd below, a collective acknowledgement that the prophecy indeed spoke of this very moment. Yet a hesitant voice pierced the air of contemplation, pointing out the glaring truth. The figure before them was not one of their own. Confusion settled over the others as they grappled with this unexpected twist. General Ryuga stood up, still agitated, and protested to the Beast King that Tsuyoshi was a human. The Beast King simply looked at Ryuga with a calm but piercing gaze and demanded an explanation for his statement. He pressed General Ryuga further, questioning whether the prophecy actually specified that the leader must be a beastman, and if Ryuga was suggesting they should ignore the one who embodies hope for their people. Ryuga conceded that ignoring the prophecy would be unthinkable. Still, he voiced his concern that even if the prophecy did not specify it, a non-beastman could cause issues for the beastmen in the future. The Beast King disregarded his concerns and turned his full attention to the hero. With an intense expression, the Beast King spoke directly to Tsuyoshi, demanding to know his name, so Tsuyoshi Tsukashiro replied with his name. The Beast King accepted the name, then laid down his terms, stating that if Tsuyoshi were willing to carry the beastmen's future on his shoulders, he would set him free. However, the Beastfolk King made it clear that Tsuyoshi was currently far too weak. He commanded Tsuyoshi to gain strength and return within 1 year, adding that at that time they would truly see if he was worthy of being their leader. As the king finished his statement, he placed his hand near Tsuyoshi's shoulder, creating a small, swirling orb of purple and blue energy. The Beastfolk King's tone then turned severe. He told Tsuyoshi that if he did not return in 1 year, he would use the newly created mental mark to hunt him down and kill him wherever he might be. The Beast King concluded, stating his demands would also satisfy his people, and awaited Tsuyoshi's response. Tsuyoshi, still seemingly confused, could only muster a bewildered, hesitant sound. He darted a look over his shoulder at the beastmen, whose insistent roars to accept it followed him like a particularly aggressive fur-covered fan club. With her hands still bound, the cat-eared woman, a beacon of defiance, urged him forward, her voice a clarion call to reclaim his freedom and forge a path to greater strength. Tsuyoshi observed the cat-eared woman, remembering that she was slated for punishment after him, suggesting a shared, grim, original destiny. Intrigued, he activated his Divine Eye skill to ascertain her identity. Tsuyoshi's Divine Eye flickered, revealing the cat-eared woman's true nature. A holographic window appeared, showing her to be a level 72 Beastman warrior, formidable with daggers, yet currently disarmed. With a final word of wisdom, she urged Tsuyoshi to embrace the gift of life, reminding him not to squander the miracle bestowed by the gods. Tsuyoshi's mind reeled as he focused on her status, noting her high level, which is 72 despite her youth. He wondered if she could be a formidable female warrior, and was perplexed as to why she was marked as a criminal. Tsuyoshi smiled gently, his eyes softening with unspoken understanding or affection, creating a brief moment of ease. With a polite wave and a hearty thank you, he acknowledged her, fully aware of the watchful gazes of the Beast King and Beast Leader. Realizing the truth in the cat-eared woman's words, Tsuyoshi exclaimed that it was indeed a miracle. His face was set with a newfound resolve, and he concluded that it was time to move on, announcing that he would return once he had gained enough strength and capabilities to return to his original world. The stage was set for his journey to power. With a surge of determination, Tsuyoshi accepted the Beast King's challenge, but not without a crucial condition of his own. The Beast King, his interest aroused, simply wondered about a condition. Tsuyoshi pointed directly at the cat-eared woman and asserted that she would come with him, reasoning that she might be helpful. The cat-eared woman, bound and helpless, stared up in utter shock. Her face, a tableau of wide-eyed astonishment, glistened with sweat. Tsuyoshi smiled down at her, a knowing look in his eye, and thought that now they were even, no debts owed, having saved her from whatever fate awaited her. With his freedom secured, Tsuyoshi began his temporary departure from the Beastman's territory, moving out into the night beneath the glow of a bright full moon, ready to embark on his mission to become stronger. Tsuyoshi found himself dressed in modern clothing, a yellow jacket and pants, standing within a futuristic-looking blue structure. He considered the voice he'd heard earlier and concluded that everything seemed to have begun with the mysterious, boundless ring he wore. He examined the elaborate gold ring on his finger, noting that it wouldn't come off, yet he had gained strange abilities thanks to it. However, he was still troubled by the practical question of how he was supposed to return to his original world. Just as he pondered this existential dilemma, a new voice broke his concentration, declaring that preparations were complete. Tsuyoshi turned around, utterly confused by the address, and questioned how he could be called Master. A new, presumably subservient character unexpectedly complicated matters for him. The cat-eared woman, now clothed adequately in a light warrior's outfit with a sheathed sword at her side, revealed herself to be the source of the mysterious voice. She proclaimed her decision to serve Tsuyoshi, her savior. Tsuyoshi for a moment was completely overcome with a ridiculously wide, blushing grin, thinking that being called master by such a cute beast-eared girl was simply irresistible. He recovered quickly, modestly waving off the title. He assured her that her words had also helped him, and that from that moment they would support each other. He seemed embarrassed by the title, fumbling slightly as he said that being called master or being served was too much. The cat-eared woman was moved, her face flushing slightly as she insisted that Tsuyoshi didn't understand how much that meant to her. She passionately explained that he had given her a second chance at life. She elaborated that no one else had ever stood by her or thanked her so straightforwardly except for him, her master. With a plea that echoed a lifetime of solitude, the newly freed cat-eared woman clasped Tsuyoshi's hand. She insisted that no one had ever truly stood by her, never genuinely offered thanks until him. Her earnest gaze, brimming with a desperate hope, fixed on his as she begged for permission to call him master. She continued, blushing and acting cute in front of Tsuyoshi, insisting his presence was a miracle, and she wanted to dedicate everything to him. Tsuyoshi, easily flustered, found himself blushing a shade of ripe tomato, a tiny river of red even threatening to escape his nose, all thanks to her unwavering dedication and alarming proximity. He finally conceded, mumbling that if it was truly her wish, she could address him as master. The cat-eared woman accepted happily, then with a playful tone asked if they should be on their way. She turned to leave, mentioning that it was getting quite late, thus beginning their strange new journey together. As they walked out into the open under the bright blue-tinged night sky, the cat-eared warrior, now identified as his servant, gently warned Tsuyoshi to watch his step. Tsuyoshi let out a long sigh of relief, feeling the tension finally dissipate from the recent high-stakes encounter with the Beast King and his general. He paused, looking up at the enormous, brilliant full moon hanging in the dark, starry sky above the strange landscape. He was struck by a sense of wonder, exclaiming that it was a fantastic other world. Tsuyoshi and the cat-eared woman, his new companion, walked away from the Beastman's dwelling, ready to face the world and the year-long challenge set before them. Tsuyoshi cleared his head, shaking off his thoughts, reminding himself that his sister Karina was waiting for him, and he couldn't afford to be distracted. A system notification popped up, announcing that the boundless passage was now available for use. It also stated that the cooldown for this feature was 24 hours. Tsuyoshi realized this was the key to his dilemma, recalling that he had been dragged into the boundless passage and transported to another world. He hypothesized that if he followed the same route, he should be able to get back. He raised his hand and the ring glowed intensely as he focused his intention to open the boundless passage. With a sudden surge of golden light, it materialized on his ring and occupied the space nearby. Tsuyoshi questioned if that was the correct way, but then the realization hit him with full force. A swirling portal once again consumed him as he exclaimed that this was it and he could finally go home. Tsuyoshi prepared to step into the glowing portal, while his bewildered companion watched the strange, swirling light and quietly thought that his master Tsuyoshi was missing. Tsuyoshi leaped into the shimmering golden portal, noting the expected unpleasant feeling of space-time distortion as he traveled. The golden light intensified, swirling around him as he was transported. The next thing he knew, he had landed on a cold, blue, and rocky surface. He found himself dressed in a complete, protective environmental suit with a helmet and gloves. He looked around in a daze, questioning if he was back. He quickly realized the new setting was an enclosed, futuristic environment, starkly different from the fantasy world he'd just left. He brought his gloved hands together in a gesture of prayer, overcome with relief, as a familiar blue status screen flickered into life before him. He excitedly declared that he did it, that the abilities he gained in the other world were still here. Tsuyoshi looked at his status screen and noted with satisfaction that his level was still 3, and his occupation and weapon slots were still empty. Crucially, the Divine Hammer remained in his inventory of Divine Consciousness. A further system notification confirmed that personal stats are shared across both worlds, but items are not. To use items from another world, they must be placed in the Divine Consciousness inventory beforehand. He was relieved that since the levels were shared, with that, leveling up in any world wouldn't be a problem, and he deduced that the Divine Hammer had traveled with him because it was in his inventory. A sudden thought, however, made Tsuyoshi question the implications of being a hero at his current level 3 status. Before he could dwell on this, a voice from the edge of the well entrance startled him. A man in a similar environmental suit was looking down at him and demanding to know what all the commotion was about, telling him to get out quickly before the cave closed. Tsuyoshi, confused as he spent hours in the other world, asked why the man was still there, and why he hadn't moved for hours. He realized something was terribly wrong, noting that he had spent at least 5 hours in the other world, yet the older man was still there. He emphasized that something was definitely not right. The man in the suit reached down and grabbed a rope, urging Tsuyoshi to hurry up and get out, as the cave would close and trap him inside forever if he dawdled. This realization hit Tsuyoshi with an epiphany. He understood that the time was frozen and climbed out of the opening via the rope. He was struck by an astonishing realization that the time in the other world had stood completely still while he was in the other. He lightheartedly compared it to something straight out of a manga. He then considered whether time was also frozen in that other world. The implications of this were vast, and he continued to ponder the enigma of the ring, wondering about the original owner of the boundless ring, as his gaze settled on a skeletal hand embedded in the rock. As the other man assisted Tsuyoshi from the cave, Tsuyoshi unexpectedly paused and addressed the older man, who, taken aback, inquired about the matter. Tsuyoshi turned, a sly, knowing smile playing on his lips, and confidently inquired about the next awakening test, asking if it was scheduled for the very next day. Tsuyoshi, with his ambitious heart, realized that time hadn't passed, and all his newfound power remained. He was now poised to enter the official test with a borderline superpower advantage. It was a bleak scene, with rain pouring heavily over a destroyed urban landscape. Tsuyoshi, much older and battle-worn, was running through the downpour, his face gritted in pain. He dashed, a frantic cry tearing from his throat, his sister clinging to his back as they fled. Heavy rain lashed down onto a city utterly destroyed, with jagged remains of buildings piercing the sky. A figure, clearly in distress, stumbled through the wreckage, their body covered in blood and grime. Caught in the maelstrom of a city in ruins, he found himself in a desperate struggle for survival. A colossal armored adversary pulsating with crimson energy bore down on him, its massive fist pulverizing the very earth beneath their feet. Rain lashed down, mingling with the blood dripping from Tsuyoshi's many wounds. On his back, his sister's voice was a weak whisper, lamenting the numbness in her legs and questioning the fate of their parents. The colossal armored enemy continued its relentless, devastating assault, pounding the ground with terrifying force, sending shockwaves and debris flying as Tsuyoshi frantically sought an escape. He stumbled and fell, desperately trying to shield his younger sister, who was still clinging to his back amidst the chaotic destruction. Both were soaked to the bone and covered in cuts and mud. Tsuyoshi, with tears streaming down his face, cried out for his dad and mom. his voice filled with unbearable anguish and despair as he looked on in horror at something just out of sight. The sheer trauma of the moment was overwhelming as he clutched his sister tight, the sound of explosions and the weight of his grief pressing down on them both. Chaos erupted, and through it, a man's voice tore through the air, screaming Sawoshi's name. He urged him not to stop, desperately telling him that if he stopped, he would die, and so he must keep moving. He cried desperately, shouting and pleading with his uncle Nakazato about his parents' distressing situation. Uncle Nakazato placed a hand on his shoulder, attempting to soothe him. Uncle Nakazato, his eyes filled with concern for Sawoshi's pain and predicament, warned him not to return for his parents. He explained that if Sawoshi did, both he and his sister Karina would also be consumed by the darkness. Sawoshi, still in a panic, informed his uncle Nakazato that his parents were still at their house. The monstrous creature continued its rampage, leaving a trail of destruction and dust-filled streets in its wake. From the settling debris, Sawoshi and his uncle emerged. Sawoshi urgently requested his uncle's help to transport his injured sister Karina to the hospital quickly. His past trauma and his sister's desperate cry for him fueled his hunger for power and a swift return to his own world, overriding his fading memories. Karina, who was sitting in a wheelchair, looked up at him with concern. She asked him if he was sure he was okay to retake the awakening test tomorrow, especially since he had only just returned from work. The nurse remarked on Karina's enduring thoughtfulness, urging her to prioritize her own rest as well. Sayoshi gently reassured her, noting her constant thoughtfulness and reminding her to make sure she also took time to rest. He then asked her if her legs still hurt. A nurse interjected, reminding Sayoshi that the nerve pain occurred regularly as a result of the nerve damage, so Karina needed to make sure she took her medication. Karina, meanwhile, bravely insisted she was okay, though her expression showed discomfort. She admitted that while she couldn't stand the pain anymore, she was used to it by now. Sayoshi looked at her with sadness, realizing that Karina was truly suffering. He activated his cheat ability, Divine Eye, and a transparent screen appeared, revealing a brutal truth. Both of his legs were trapped under a collapsed building, with 98% of the nerve cells necrotized, causing intermittent nerve pain. There was no possibility of natural recovery, and the grim prognosis at the bottom read a 1% chance of walking unaided again. Sayoshi brooded over the chilling diagnosis, which is a mere 1% chance of Karina walking unaided again, thinking how tough it must be for her. He lamented that his sister should have been able to live a normal life, attend school, socialize with friends, and go on trips, believing she must have wanted to spend every day with a smile on her face. He reaffirmed that Karina was his only family and that he couldn't bear to see her suffer any more than she already had. He vowed that even if the odds were close to zero, he would ensure she could stand on her own again. Walking away from the hospital, he bolstered his resolve that as long as there was even a 1% chance, there was still hope. He was determined that there must be a way to accomplish the mission. He connected his mission to the impending test, contemplating that if he could become a hero, he would be able to access more information and potentially find a solution to Karina's condition. He also yearned for a life he could be proud of, a motivation that went beyond simply wanting his sister to heal. He declared his final decision, which is why he was going to become the strongest hero. His face set with determined resolve as he passed the crowds. Tsuyoshi raised his fist toward the gigantic full moon, declaring his intent to become the strongest hero. The scene then shifted to the brightly lit modern exterior of the BTG, or the Brave Test Group Awakening test site, bathed in the moonlight. Inside the building, the testing official announced the results of one applicant. The measurement results were level 3, with a combat power of 540. The official then offered his congratulations to one of the takers of the examination, proclaiming that the applicant was now a hero. He directed the successful applicant to accept the hero's emblem, customized based on the test results. A young man with blonde hair and wearing sunglasses erupted in a triumphant cheer. He had finally achieved his dream of becoming a hero. A woman, her hand resting reassuringly on the young man's shoulder, commended his success and encouraged him to continue his hard work towards reaching C rank. She promised a grand celebratory feast that very night. The official then looked down at his notes and announced the next candidate, Tsuyoshi Tsukishiro. He doubted Tsuyoshi's second attempt at the test after his initial failure. The official, adjusting his glasses, instructed Tsuyoshi to step inside and place his hand on the measurement device when he was ready, though he doubted it would be any different from last time. Tsuyoshi, wearing a black tank top and military-style pants with his ring on his finger, walked into the testing area, undeterred by the official's skepticism. He concluded his dismissive statement with a challenge, suggesting they would soon discover if their efforts were in vain. The officer then again commented that if one fails once, the result is likely to be the same every time, as the device measures scientifically from all angles. He added that he had seen plenty of stubborn people like Tsuyoshi come through there. Tsuyoshi continued to walk inside the testing room, confirming that the last person had been level 3 with a combat power of 3, which was within the normal range. Tsuyoshi stepped up to the device as he prepared to place his hand on the measurement pad, a screen showing a level 3 flickering to life. He mentally noted that he was also a level 3 that time, so he should qualify to be a hero, but wondered exactly how high his combat power would be. Tsuyoshi took a deep breath, telling himself he needed to take the measurement seriously. With focused intensity, he activated his power, and a notification flashed: Ultimate Physique Activation. His body was instantly covered in a complex pattern of glowing red lines, and his eyes turned completely white as he channeled his full strength, sweat beading on his skin. He slammed his hand onto the measurement device with an explosion of raw power. A vortex of red, pulsing energy erupted from the contact point, overwhelming the entire panel. Outside the testing chamber, the official was utterly taken aback by the sudden energy surge, hesitating while speaking, as if it felt like an earthquake. The measurement display went completely haywire, flickering between a seemingly impossible score. The final number that settled on the massive digital screen, vibrating with red light, was an unbelievable jaw-dropping combat power. Tsuyoshi's hidden power was far beyond what the machine could measure. The system publicly displayed Tsuyoshi's official, slightly sanitized results, which indicated a level 3 measurement and a combat power of 5400. It proudly announced that the 30-year-old level 3 hero combat power record had been broken, with the previous second-place combat power being only 920. Tsuyoshi smiled smugly, realizing his 5400 was 10 times more than the last guy. He mused that he thought he had gotten a somewhat sturdy body, but he didn't expect this result. He assumed a powerful, confident stance, concluding that everything was proceeding as planned. He affirmed his goal to become the strongest. A new curiosity took hold of him, and he decided to check the limits of his most potent tool. He was curious about the power of the Divine King's hammer. He concentrated, and a burst of fierce blue energy exploded from his hand. A system notification flashed, detailing the limitations. Due to an insufficient level and other conditions, the true potential of the Divine King's hammer could not be unleashed. Forcing the release would drain an enormous amount of energy. The brief duration of release was listed as 1 second, indicating his current limit for tapping into the Divine King's hammer's raw power. Tsuyoshi accepted the 1-second time limit for the Divine King's hammer's forced release, concluding that 1 second should be enough time for the machine to calculate the resulting combat power roughly. He decided to test the limit, saying that he would give it a shot. He gripped the divine hammer and slammed his hand back onto the measurement pad. He dramatically shouted, unleashing the power of the Divine King's hammer, his eyes glowing red with the effort. A system notification immediately appeared. The power of the Divine King's hammer had been unleashed. The release duration was 1 second. The strain was immediate and intense. Tsuyoshi cried out as his entire body's energy was drained in an instant, surrounded by a swirling vortex of potent blue-purple lightning and energy. Fighting against the debilitating energy drain, he managed to shout at the machine to hurry up and measure it, demanding to know how much his combat power had increased. Tsuyoshi's face contorted in a mix of agony and frantic determination. The forced release of the Divine King's hammer was cataclysmic. A massive vortex of purple energy erupted from the measurement area, briefly illuminating the entire city skyline at night. People outside were terrified, wondering if there was an earthquake or what was happening in the sky. The testing chamber's screen violently flashed red, blaring warnings of an energy overload and an inability to measure the current output. The building's lights flickered and went out as the surge caused a total blackout. The official, completely terrified, was thrown against the glass, frantically shouting that due to the blackout, the test was suspended and everyone needed to evacuate immediately. Tsuyoshi, utterly exhausted and drained, leaned against the measurement chamber, letting out a groan of profound fatigue. His body was visibly emaciated and sickly, demonstrating the enormous energy drain of the 1-second release. The official saw the barely standing Tsuyoshi and cried out in utter terror and confusion, demanding to know who he was. Tsuyoshi, back in the hallway, looked slightly pale, musing to himself that he had underestimated the Divine King's hammer and didn't expect it to drain his entire strength in just 1 second. He resolved to avoid using the Divine King's hammer until he had gained proper strength. Despite the slightly concerning test results, he couldn't help but flash a dazzling, albeit slightly manic grin. His hero's emblem, which probably cost a fortune, practically gleamed with self-satisfaction on his chest. He declared to no one in particular that he was officially a hero now. Meanwhile, Tsuyoshi returned to the training grounds, continuing his pursuit of becoming a hero. A majestic old warrior in golden armor introduced himself as Gaia, the hero responsible for their training. Tsuyoshi used his divine eye on Gaia, revealing his status. His name was Gaia. He was level 9, his occupation was warrior, and his combat power was 1200. Gaia warned the assembled new heroes that the instruction would be strict, but they would need to keep up. Tsuyoshi and the other new heroes, including a grinning, bespectacled man, responded with a chorus of agreement, showing their readiness to take on the challenges ahead. Tsuyoshi, comparing his trainer's combat power to his own perceived maximum, mused that 1,1200 combat power at level 9 was low, wondering how high his own combat power would be at that level. The trainer, Gaia, was inwardly irritated by his current duty, thinking he would rather be exploring a D-rank dungeon than doing this menial work, as he looked at the group of new heroes. He then dramatically announced that all of them would be entering a D-rank dungeon the next day, adding that after some field experience they would figure out which occupation suited them best. There was even a chance for low-level item drops. The ink on their hero certificates was suddenly barely dry when the dungeon master dropped the bombshell or challenge. One of the freshly minted champions, clearly expecting a congratulatory tea party, yelped in surprise. Their heroic journey was kicking off with a bang, or rather a whump into a monster-filled pit. Another trainee asked if there wasn't supposed to be a week of basic physical training first, while the bespectacled man asked if they shouldn't decide on their occupations before entering the dungeon. Gaia, his face set with a fierce, yellow-eyed glare, scoffed at the idea of basic physical training. He loudly declared that they didn't have time for that, asserting that now that they were heroes, they would be honing their skills through real combat. Gaia concluded his fiery speech by declaring that it was his way of doing things. He issued a final warning that the training would be strict, and if they couldn't keep up, they should leave, demanding to know if they understood. The terrified new heroes, lying on the ground after his dramatic announcement, weakly responded that they would follow orders. Gaia then scoffed, reiterating that there would be no questions asked, only orders to follow. Tsuyoshi watched his fellow trainer, understanding that Gaia was simply venting his frustration. Even a hero, after all, was still human. However, he ultimately disregarded the trainer's dramatic display. His mind immediately drifted to his new companion in the other world. A blushing image of the cat-eared woman filled his thoughts. Tsuyoshi's face contorted into a ridiculously wide, nose-bleeding grin of excitement. He reveled in the fact that he now had a level 72 beast girl waiting for him. He promised himself that once the cooldown for the Boundless Passage was over, he would head back to the other world, eager to meet his new destiny. That night, in Tsuyoshi's apartment, a news report was playing, informing viewers that a power outage had affected certain areas of the city due to the earthquake that occurred around 7 p.m. that night. Fortunately, no injuries had been reported from the quake, and the Hero Union was currently investigating the incident. Tsuyoshi, sitting in his room, declared he was ready, as the cooldown for the Boundless Passage was over, and it was time to head back to the other world. His plan was clear: he would grow stronger there, choose his occupation, and gather all the necessary equipment for the future. He raised his ringed hand and commanded it to open Boundless Passage. The ring pulsed with an intensely bright golden light, and a wormhole of sparkling light and blue energy opened up below him. He was ready to dive back into the fantasy world beneath the glow of the distant full moon and the silhouette of towering dark mountains. Tsuyoshi found himself back in the mountainous landscape of the other world, landing gracefully. He observed his surroundings, noting that the scenery was just as it had been when he left. He then noticed a crucial detail. His clothes had reverted to what he wore the first time, the yellow jacket and boots. He deduced that once one leaves that other world, both time and equipment revert to their original state. This explained why his armor and the passage of time were reset upon his return. His companion, a woman with prominent cat ears, leaned over him and asked what was wrong, her considerable assets nearly eclipsing his view. Tsuyoshi was momentarily stunned by her impressive presence. He'd almost forgotten about the big one, the large cat-eared beast with a prominent bosom. Tsuyoshi quickly came to his senses, sheepishly dismissing it as nothing. With a fresh burst of enthusiasm and a telltale blush, he declared it was time to level up, and still slightly flustered with a nosebleed, eagerly gestured for her to lead the way. The cat-eared girl, pleased with Tsuyoshi's enthusiasm, exclaimed she was glad to see he was so eager, as she called him master. She suggested they start their leveling journey at a nearby level 3 goblin nest. She warned him that even though the goblins were only level 3, they were cunning, lecherous, and numerous, so he had to stay vigilant. Tsuyoshi, with a humorous look of mock concern, shot back that if they were lecherous, it was she who needed to be careful. His response temporarily took her aback, but Tsuyoshi quickly smiled and stated that goblins made the world feel like a real fantasy world now. He was excited to see what effects the divine selection system would have. He declared that they should be settled already, and the first target was the goblins. The two began to move toward their destination beneath the giant moon. The girl gave a final, severe warning to Tsuyoshi to be careful not to wake up the goblin sentries. Tsuyoshi rechecked his companion's stats, noting that she was level 72 with a combat power of 630,000, and asked her if she could take down the goblins easily since she was so high level. The cat-eared girl was momentarily shocked that he knew her level. Tsuyoshi, with an intense look, simply told her that he was not her master for nothing. He then humbly asked her to show him how a high-level hero fights. The cat-eared girl immediately reminded him of the game mechanics. stating that if she fought alongside him, he wouldn't earn any experience points due to the excellent level difference. Shoryoshi was surprised by this rule, but he still insisted on seeing her in action. The girl sat down with him to discuss tactics. Shoryoshi was still with his protective helmet, and the cat-eared woman was sitting nearby looking nervous. The cat-eared woman admitted that he was flattering her with the term in action, but if he insisted, she would give it a shot. She warned him to observe, though she wasn't sure how much help it would be. With a determined and serious expression, she drew her sword, announced that she was going in and prepared to enter the fray alone. The cat-eared woman struck instantly and with overwhelming force. A brilliant blue arc of energy sliced through the darkness, finding its mark on a massive, grotesque-looking goblin, which was instantly dispatched. A shower of blood and gore erupted as the decisive blow cleanly finished the creature. Shoryoshi watched the display of skill, completely awestruck, his jaw dropping to the floor. He exclaimed that it was the movement of a high-level warrior and found it incredibly cool. With a perfectly radiant expression, the cat-eared girl informs Shoryoshi he was too kind, clearly flattered, and perhaps a little surprised by his compliment. The girl sheathed her sword and turned back completely to Shoryoshi, apologizing that she always gave her best against even low-level opponents, hoping it was helpful. Still reeling from the raw display of power, Shoryoshi managed to point out her modesty. He then, with a hopeful glint in his eye, inquired if she would be willing to share the secret of the technique she had just employed. The cat-eared woman explained that the technique she used, instant step slash, was a skill for high-level warriors and not suitable for Shoryoshi yet, pointing out that he hadn't even decided on an occupation. Shoryoshi, with a confident, cocky smile, immediately decided that he would become a warrior as well. He rationalized that having a level 72 warrior by his side would make it easier to replicate skills without worrying about occupational compatibility. He added that since he couldn't use the Divine King's hammer yet, he needed to find a replacement weapon. A system notification flashed, confirming the change. Shoryoshi had switched to the warrior occupation. His status screen showed Occupation Warrior, with a combat power of 540. The cat-eared girl's face flushed with a delighted blush. She told him that since he chose to become a warrior because of her, she would make sure to be of use. She promised to do her best to support him in leveling up, and suggested they gather some equipment for warriors first. Shoryoshi beamed, a genuine connection sparking in his heart. He mused internally that it was a kind world as the warrior cat-eared girl latched onto his arm, ready to kickstart their training journey. He wondered if she'd noticed his slightly wobbly knees, which he told himself were merely a subtle pre-training ritual. Just as Shoryoshi and the cat-eared girl were speaking, two level 3 goblins, each with a combat power of 420, suddenly appeared before them, roaring in anger and wielding wooden bats. Shoryoshi realized he would have to handle those guys on his own. He requested a dagger from the cat-eared warrior, explaining there was something he wanted to try. She seemed hesitant, but Shoryoshi took a silver dagger from her side, and a notification confirmed that a silver dagger had been equipped, which also appeared as borrowed. The cat girl was immediately concerned, warning him that engaging a same-level enemy head-on was dangerous. Shoryoshi, however, was already in motion, ready to test his skills against the goblins. Shoryoshi charged headlong toward the two level 3 goblins, announcing his intention to use them as guinea pigs to test the power of his replicated Heaven Shaker skill thoroughly. He sighed and lunged into the air, the dagger glowing with a fierce light, and unleashed his power. The attack was devastating. A blinding flash of golden energy erupted at the point of contact. The force of the impact utterly annihilated both goblins, leaving nothing but dust and debris. Shoryoshi landed amidst the smoking remnants of his enemies, completely unscathed, with a notification briefly appearing, showing a massive level increase to his combat power and level. The cat-eared girl, watching the spectacular display of power, was completely dumbfounded. She realized that he had defeated both same-level goblins in an instant, a feat that a party of 6 would struggle to achieve. Her surprise was profound as she witnessed her master's impossible instant leveling feat. Shoryoshi stood proudly over the annihilated goblins, his borrowed dagger in hand, with triumphant EXP plus notifications floating around him. A confident smile spread across his face as he declared the task surprisingly easy, vowing to eliminate the remaining goblins. He marveled at the system's efficiency, stating that the divine selection system was quite fascinating, and he would reach level 4 by the end of the night. With a shimmering screen before him, Shoryoshi beheld his destiny. Level 3 warrior, wielding a borrowed silver dagger, and armed with the awe-inspiring replicated skill Heaven Shaker. Only 50 experience points separated him from his next evolution, a mere fraction of the 3,000 needed. The path was clear, the challenge immense, but Shoryoshi was officially on his way to becoming the greatest hero across 2 realms. With a contrite expression, the cat-eared woman apologized for the inconvenience, offering Shoryoshi a rough wooden stick as a temporary weapon. He accepted the item, and a status update instantly materialized before his eyes, revealing his weapon as a worn-out wooden stick. Yet, he still possessed his replicated skill Heaven Shaker and his low experience level of 50 out of 3,000. Tsuyoshi, undeterred, brightly stated that even a goblin stick wasn't too bad. The cat-eared girl, however, was serious about his survival, insisting that they must hurry and gather some basic equipment, as his current gear offered almost no defense. Tsuyoshi acknowledged her concern, agreeing that without proper equipment, he realized that he was completely vulnerable to attacks, especially since his current defense was 0. He concluded that he would need not just a weapon but armor as well. Tsuyoshi then paused, mentioning he had done a little research on the Divine Consciousness inventory earlier, leaving the final thought hanging in the air as he focused on his next steps. Tsuyoshi continued his internal monologue regarding his inventory, reading the system information. His Divine Consciousness inventory was a space that existed solely in his consciousness, unaffected by the real world. Its current slot count was 2. He realized that unlike standard item storage, items placed in the Divine Consciousness inventory could be used in both worlds. He excitedly deemed this to be interesting. He checked his current status. His combat power was 5,400, and his current weapon was a worn-out wooden stick. The Divine Hammer occupied one of his 2 inventory slots, leaving only 1 slot remaining. A final piece of information appeared. The Divine Consciousness inventory described the Divine Consciousness as a tool that grows through training and is also influenced by one's abilities. Leveling up would expand the slots. He synthesized the information, concluding that as he trained, grew, and increased his level, his Divine Consciousness inventory slots would also expand. He realized the predicament of his limited inventory and wondered how he could increase the slots. He couldn't simply discard the hammer, and having only 1 open slot was inconvenient. Tsuyoshi's mind drifted back to the inventory problem, observing the cat-eared girl and mentally noting that a complete set of equipment in both worlds was divided into 5 parts: head, arms, torso, thighs, and feet. He was so absorbed that the girl noticed him staring and asked if there was something on her face. He quickly shook off his distraction, making a flirtatious internal comment about the irresistible nature of beast-eared girls and wondering about other races in that world, before giving a casual dismissal, claiming he was just checking if she was still following him. With a frantic shout, the girl warned her master of the danger lurking behind him. Tsuyoshi barely had time to turn, a bewildered hun escaping his lips, before a group of level 4 goblins, fully alerted to their presence, was upon them. They were leering and shouting about an intruder and a woman. The cat-eared girl swiftly moved to intercept the closest goblin with her sword, as Tsuyoshi was knocked backward by the sheer momentum of the charging enemies. The urgent need for him to level up quickly was now a matter of immediate survival. The cat-eared girl moved with incredible speed, pulling Tsuyoshi back and drawing her sword to intercept the charging level 4 goblin, warning him that the goblins got stronger as they went deeper, urging him to stay alert. Tsuyoshi, still focused on exploiting his advantage, immediately asked if that meant the experience points earned would also increase. Then, remembering the rule, he shouted at her not to interfere, warning that if she did, he would not get the experience. She ignored his protest, quickly dealing with the immediate threat. But before she could turn her attention back to him, Tsuyoshi was already in action, having been knocked down by one of the larger goblins. The goblin, shocked, exclaimed that he was a reckless fool. Tsuyoshi recovered quickly, using the momentum of his fall to launch himself into a fierce attack. He swung his worn-out wooden stick and unleashed his replicated Heaven Shaker skill, shouting, "Take the attack he will give." The resulting explosion of golden light and force completely obliterated the surrounding goblins, leaving the air clear for the brief moment of his victory. Tsuyoshi successfully annihilated the level 4 goblins. The sheer force of his attack shattered his flimsy, worn-out wooden stick, which broke into several pieces mid-swing. Amidst the shattered remnants of his fallen foes, he found himself a changed man. His status screen showed a new, stark reality. He was still level 3, with only 150 experience points out of 3,000, and his once trusty weapon was now a visibly damaged, worn-out wooden stick. He looked down at his broken weapon as he exercised his wrist, musing that the higher the level of the enemy, the more experience he gained. He realized the trade-off with a grimace. His current weapon was simply too fragile to withstand his power. Tsuyoshi knew he would need to get proper equipment quickly if he was to continue this accelerated leveling plan. The cat-eared girl was awestruck by Tsuyoshi's continuous onslaught, mentally exclaiming that his potential had such incredible explosive power and that the blow with the wooden stick showed strength that shouldn't be possible at his level. She was also impressed by his ability to defeat multiple enemies at once, despite the level difference, a truly master-like feat. As the pair progressed deeper into the goblin nest, the number of goblins increased and their levels rose. However, Tsuyoshi's explosive power made their numbers irrelevant. He continued his rampage, destroying more goblins and gaining massive amounts of experience, quickly climbing from 360 out of 3,000 experience to 1,230 out of 3,000. The cat-eared girl cheered wildly, exclaiming that Tsuyoshi's skill was exceptional. However, a frustrated thought quickly interrupted her excitement. Tsuyoshi's weapons were trash. The flimsy wooden sticks and daggers were breaking almost instantly, and this last one was already the sixth weapon to be destroyed. Tsuyoshi dispatched the final massive goblin with a single powerful blow, reflecting on his rapid growth. He had never expected the experience bonuses in this world to be so great. Realizing he was getting stronger much faster than anticipated, he noted a huge contrast to his original world, where as a cleaner, he remembered hearing heroes complain that the experience from level 3 and 4 kobolds barely added up to 10, meaning constant dungeon re-entry was the only path to leveling up. He also remembered another frustrating obstacle in his original world. The Hero Alliance required forming a party to enter dungeons, which meant experience was divided equally, making it inefficient. Furthermore, the powerful guilds took all the valuable drops, leaving little for individual heroes. He recalled hearing other heroes complain that all the dungeons were fought over, leaving them with no opportunity to level up. But here, in this new world, Tsuyoshi realized his advantage. He could hog all the experience, and the monsters seemed to grant more of it. His eyes shone with pure ambition as he looked at his updated EXP, which was 2,100 out of 3,000. He concluded that this was amazing and that he would level up like crazy in this other world. Tsuyoshi and the cat-eared woman paused, resting for a moment among the rocky terrain of the goblin nest. Tsuyoshi, still panting from his explosive attack, mused that at that incredible pace he would rush straight to the boss. He lay resting, his head beside the cat-eared girl who was also resting on the ground. A foreboding change in the environment caught his attention. The air was filled with a shadowy black mist, and a sinister, large silhouette with glowing red eyes emerged from the depths of the cave. Sweat trickled down Tsuyoshi's face as he watched the intimidating figure. A chilling question formed in his mind, wondering if that was the goblin boss. His apprehension renewed, every muscle tensed, ready for whatever terror awaited him. The gigantic goblin boss was revealed, its figure distorted, with long, tentacle-like appendages hanging from its back and glowing red eyes. The cat-eared woman looked at it with grim understanding, stating that it was unlucky for them that this time darkness had possessed the boss. Tsuyoshi was immediately alarmed, his thoughts consumed by the term darkness. He was shocked to find that darkness was also present in this world, wondering if the darkness lurking in the caves of his original world was the same entity. A chilling realization struck him. The dark goblin looked precisely like the entity that had killed his father and mother. Tsuyoshi clutched a new dark wooden staff tightly. The cat-eared girl confirmed that enemies possessed by darkness were formidable. She explained that the boss here was only level 6, but once possessed by darkness, its strength became exponentially greater. The cat-eared woman expressed her grave concern, explaining that darkness possesses not only terrifying power, but its very existence is shrouded in mystery. Tsuyoshi's gaze hardened, his personal mission overriding all caution. He declared he would absolutely take the boss down with his own hands, whether it was now or sometime in the future. He didn't know what connection darkness had across different worlds, but he vowed he would kill every one of them. With raw determination etched on his face, he pointed at the grotesque, dark goblin boss. He vowed to kill them, the very ones who had murdered his father and mother, with his own hands. With that visceral cry, Tsuyoshi charged directly at the colossal, terrifying monster, plunging himself into the ultimate confrontation. His companion, now fully alarmed by his recklessness, screamed his title, calling him master. The monstrous, dark green goblin boss bared its many sharp teeth, mouth agape and ready to attack Tsuyoshi. Tsuyoshi charged, yelling a challenge at the immense dark goblin boss, level 6, and unleashed his replicated Heaven Shaker skill. Driven by raw hatred, he screamed that damn darkness had ruined Karina's life and commanded it to die. He launched himself into the air, the sheer force of his attack even without a proper weapon, creating an audible, powerful arc of blue light. The attack successfully hit the massive creature, but the goblin boss was not instantly defeated. Instead, the boss retaliated immediately, its huge, shadowy arm swatting Tsuyoshi away like a fly. The attack also severed the goblin boss's massive, worm-like appendages. Tsuyoshi was flung back with crushing force, slamming into the ground amidst a shower of debris and dust. The force of the counterattack was overwhelming. Defeated and bleeding, Tsuyoshi lay prone, his eyes ablaze with searing frustration. The level 6 dark goblin boss retaliated with overwhelming brute force, its massive, grotesque head lurching forward for a crushing bite. The dark goblin boss's massive tongue shot out towards Tsuyoshi. The cat-eared girl, drawing her sword, frantically urged Tsuyoshi to arm himself just as the boss's huge mouth snapped shut. But Tsuyoshi managed to survive, bruised and battered, his clothes tattered and almost gone. Lying on the ground, Tsuyoshi spat out a furious challenge at the monster, accusing it of killing his parents and being the enemy of his sister Karina. He refused to be killed by the likes of the monster, his eyes burning with intense, focused rage. In a pivotal moment, a system notification flashed. declaring the ultimate physique activation complete. A surge of golden power immediately coursed through his hand, transforming his fist into a weapon of pure energy, giving him the power he needed to fight back against the formidable foe. Tsuyoshi was completely engulfed in a blinding golden aura, his face contorted in an expression of raw exertion and determination. His right arm swelled, straining the fabric of his sleeve, threatening to burst free like a superhero emerging from a too-tight costume. The system confirmed the ultimate transformation. The enhancement was focused on the right hand, which was experiencing immense strain, so caution was advised. With the terrifying power now coursing through him, Tsuyoshi roared in affirmation that if he did not have a weapon, his body would be the weapon. He launched a devastating counterattack. His golden energy-infused fist slammed into the ground where the goblin boss was. The resulting explosion was colossal, utterly engulfing the monster and the surrounding environment in a blinding flash of golden light and force. He finally had the power to fight on equal terms. With his body now a weapon, Tsuyoshi continued his ferocious assault. He roared as he delivered another impossibly powerful blow. The goblin boss, unable to withstand the continuous, overwhelming force, finally succumbed. The immense creature's body was disintegrated by the golden energy, leaving behind only swirling dust. The cat-eared girl, caught in the residual shockwave, shielded her eyes and screamed in shock as the immense force of her master's power washed over her. Tsuyoshi stood at the center of the destruction, his body still glowing with the golden power of the ultimate physique, completely exhausted but utterly victorious until the level 6 dark goblin boss was gone entirely. After the intense battle, Tsuyoshi stood amidst the smoking remnants of the goblin boss. A status screen flashed, confirming his victory and progress. His level was 4, his occupation was warrior, and he had no weapon or any skills. His replicated skill was Heaven Shaker. A triumphant notification appeared, adding 1,000 to his level up. His right arm, visibly exhausted and red, returned to its normal size with a release of air. His eyes burned with a renewed grim resolve. He silently affirmed his unbreakable vow that he would kill all the darkness. His current experience was reset to 0 out of 6,000, signaling the beginning of his next stage of power gaining. The cat-eared woman rushed to Tsuyoshi's side, calling out in distress about his arm, which was obviously injured from the sheer force of the blow. Tsuyoshi, exhausted, groaned as a notice appeared on his status screen. His right hand had been severely injured. If not treated promptly, it would cause necrosis. He realized his mistake, thinking he had used too much strength as sweat ran down his face and he still felt chills. The system then offered a valuable tip. He could freely adjust the parts and strengthen his strongest body. Since he had focused all his energy on his right hand, it was now unable to withstand an equivalent amount of energy. His eyes suddenly half opened as he was about to lose consciousness. Tsuyoshi collapsed to the ground, shirtless and heavily wounded. The cat-eared girl worried and called him master. The cat-eared girl caught Tsuyoshi just in time. He leaned directly against her knocker, murmuring about the pain in his arm. The cat-eared woman knelt beside him, looking worried, and comforted him, saying that she had some medicine there. She immediately started tending to her master's severe injuries. 1 hour later, Tsuyoshi was already sitting up, visibly healed, with the 2 small winged creatures nearby. He stretched, smiled, and exclaimed that he already felt much better. He noted the power of the foreign remedy, musing that the recovery speed was much slower than the medicine in his original world, but the effects were immense. He theorized that the world's pharmacology had a more ancient history. The cat-eared girl, looking cheerful, confirmed that the medicine had worked so well. Tsuyoshi rose to his feet, energized, claiming he felt even more energized and stronger than he was before, and struck a pose to showcase his impressive physique. The cat-eared woman, pointing excitedly at a glowing treasure chest, urged him to get their rewards now. Wiping sweat from his brow, Tsuyoshi suddenly remembered the reward. He had completely forgotten about it, he exclaimed as they ventured deeper. A system notification flashed, congratulating him. Rewards had been added, and the record for the shortest time to destroy a boss in that cave had been achieved. The classification would be upgraded from partial reward to a fixed reward. Tsuyoshi observed the message that flashed. Analyzing its effect on him, with a sudden surge of excitement, the cat-eared woman's eyes landed on a treasure chest perched atop the wreckage. She pointed, her voice laced with triumph, declaring it a coveted darkness treasure chest. Tsuyoshi was surprised by the reward classification, and the cat-eared woman explained that darkness-type equipment was extremely rare, the kind they could rarely find at auctions. Tsuyoshi rushed to the giant golden treasure chest, which gleamed with treasure inside. He hugged the chest close, his face alight with greedy satisfaction. All his hard work finally paid off with this reward. With bated breath, Tsuyoshi eased open the ancient treasure chest. A radiant golden glow, as if a captured sunbeam, softly faded, revealing the mysteries within. A system notice confirmed that he had received the Dark Goblin set. The cat-eared woman joyfully explained that receiving the set reward was a true blessing, anticipating the outfit's undeniable usefulness. Tsuyoshi's initial surprise quickly turned into a sudden closing of the treasure chest, as if a memory had resurfaced. Behind him, the cat-eared girl looked on, confused by the abrupt interruption. Tsuyoshi realized that he had only one more slot left in his inventory. The system presented a prompt asking if he wanted to save it in his inventory, to which he could respond with a simple yes or no. It also displayed his divine consciousness inventory status, showing one remaining slot. Tsuyoshi thought about the potential trade-offs of storing the item, wondering if the entire set would occupy all the available inventory slots. He deduced that if the whole set only took up one slot, it would be a huge advantage. With a determined internal thought, he hit the yes option. The final confirmation appeared, stating that the Dark Goblin set had been added to his inventory, and he could now use the item at his own will. The icon for the set, showing a complete suit of armor, now occupied the single available slot in his divine consciousness inventory. Tsuyoshi, realizing his luck with the inventory glitch, flashed a wide, satisfied grin, and the cat-eared girl, unnerved by his strange expression, asked why he was smiling like that. He quickly composed himself, claiming he was just looking at the set reward, and then changed the subject. He asked the cat-eared woman if she could sew, and she cheerfully confirmed that she had been sewing her own clothes since she was a little girl, and had a sewing kit with her. The pair then sat together under the huge, glowing moon and the magical, sparkling night sky. After a while, she presented him with a piece of dark clothing she had sewn, her face expectant as she asked if it was good enough. Tsuyoshi smiled at her, thanking her for the essential garment. The first of his new custom-made gear was ready. Wearing his new simple black tank top, Tsuyoshi beamed at the cat-eared woman, exclaiming in awe at her skill as she looked pleased to be of service. He then reminded himself that since he had leveled up and gotten his gear, it was time to go back. Tsuyoshi, however, suggested they settle down for the night to rest and recover, eager for his next steps in his original world. The cat-eared girl readily agreed, her enthusiasm echoing his own desire for a fresh start. With that, under the full moon with Tsuyoshi's apartment building, he opened the portal once more, going back to his original world. He emerged in his apartment bedroom, falling onto his bed. He let out a relieved sigh, having finally made it back. He reflected on his time in the other world, noting that after he walked around with the cat-eared girl, they finally found a place to stay. Tsuyoshi lay in his bed, recalling his last few hours in the other world, where he had to wait for his companion to fall asleep before using the portal to return and rest. He noted that he had truly gotten a bunch of good stuff that time. He knew he couldn't stop the flow of time in his world forever, and needed to get some rest, anticipating his first foray into a cave the next day. The next day, Tsuyoshi woke up in his apartment. A system prompt instantly materialized before him, demanding his attention. It declared the Dark Goblin set was in his inventory. A simple question followed, a choice laid bare, asking if he would like to put it on, yes or no. With a decisive tap of his finger, Tsuyoshi chose to move forward, a choice that hummed with untold possibilities. The system confirmed that his choice, the Dark Goblin set, was now in effect. A swift notification then unveiled its terrifying power, which is the Roaring Tentacles. When unleashed, this skill would emit a scream, freezing all low-grade enemies in their tracks. Simultaneously, his hand would transform into a colossal phantom tentacle, ready to deliver lethal damage. Tsuyoshi smiled, his face momentarily covered by a dark, shadowy hood as the set manifested. He was thrilled, exclaiming that it even had special skills. He was now ready for his heroic duties with a powerful new set of equipment. Tsuyoshi was now fully clad in the imposing Dark Goblin set, which was a menacing, sharp-edged black and gray armor with glowing red accents. He smirked, anticipating the fun to come. However, he immediately realized a critical issue, thinking that he would get into trouble if he went out and other heroes saw him in this outfit. He knew that the original world's heroes were unscrupulous and would kill others to steal equipment, and a newcomer wearing such distinctive gear would definitely stand out. As he agonized over his dilemma, a system prompt appeared. It reads Equipment Effect Conceal. The prompt instructed him to hide his equipment and make it appear as regular clothing. A question followed, asking if he wanted to hide his gear. The options were yes or no. Tsuyoshi was ecstatic. The disguise was perfect, and he immediately chose yes. The sinister armor melted away, covering his body in a subdued black liquid that instantly transformed back into his regular clothes. Now dressed usually, with a few minutes to spare before his hero meeting, he decided to grab some bread. Just as he was about to head out, his phone, which he had found in the market, started ringing in his pocket. Tsuyoshi answered the ringing phone. The chief nurse was on the other end, confirming his identity as Karina's brother and frantically explaining that some scary people were at the hospital demanding to take Karina, claiming she owed them money. The nurse pleaded with Tsuyoshi to come at once. Tsuyoshi instantly connected the dots. He had no choice but to take out a loan to keep Karina in the hospital, and he had been paying them back every week as agreed. He angrily thought about why they would try to take her now. He vehemently shouted into the phone, telling the nurse not to let them touch his sister. The nurse then cried out that they had taken her phone and pleaded for him to hurry. The line went dead with a buzzing sound. Tsuyoshi face contorted with rage, his eyes glowing red with fury. He clenched his fists, shouting, "Damn it," and was immediately enveloped in a dark, shadowy aura. His personal stats were visible, showing his updated status with the Dark Goblin set equipped. Driven by the threat to his sister, he was instantly galvanized into action. In the hospital, Karina was desperately trying to stop the two men, gang members who were trying to take her. She cried out for them to stop and to wait for her brother. She keeps pleading with them not to touch her, but they don't listen at all. One of the men, who had a smug and sinister air about him, revealed the real reason for their actions. He explained that Tsuyoshi had borrowed money and not paid it off within the agreed time, so they were taking her as per the contract. He then thought to himself that the only reason he had loaned money to that idiot was because the young boss liked the girl. A girl that pretty. He mused while looking at Karina's photo, would fetch a pretty penny on the black market, and the fact that she couldn't walk was also to the liking of wealthy people. The man smugly believed he had outsmarted Tsuyoshi in their deal, but Tsuyoshi remained oblivious. He continued to think that since she was still a child, he could just take her and have fun all he wanted, assuring himself that he knew what he was doing and had done it before. Karina was in grave danger, entirely at the mercy of the ruthless men. Karina, tears welling up in her eyes, fiercely argued with the gang member, shouting that her brother would never sign such a contract and accusing him of cheating Tsuyoshi. The gangster, looking down on her, scoffed and revealed the predatory nature of the loan. He explained that Tsuyoshi's weekly payments were barely enough to cover the interest, and he had no idea when he would get the principal back. He grabbed Karina by the jaw, his face close to hers, and in a deeply chilling, sinister manner, offered a vile proposition. He told her that if she came with them nicely, they would be lenient with her. His expression twisted into a terrifying dark smile, as he added that if she refused, there would be no hard feelings. The gang member clearly didn't intend to let her go easily, the dark predatory nature of his actions now completely revealed. Suddenly, the man's gaze snapped to the door, as if he'd heard something drawing near. Just as the gang member finished his menacing threat, the door to the hospital room exploded inward with a deafening crash, shattered glass flying everywhere. A sudden violent intrusion startled the gangster, who then cried out, demanding to know the identity of the intruder. Tsuyoshi emerged from the debris, his expression a terrifying mask of incandescent rage, his eyes glowing a fierce, malevolent red. His face was contorted in anger, and a dark, crackling energy radiated from his body. Driven by the threat to his sister, he issued a chilling command to the stunned men, telling them to brace themselves. Tsuyoshi stood in the damaged hospital room, his body radiating a dark aura. His status screen confirmed his current state as level 4 warrior, equipped with the Dark Goblin set, which included roaring tentacles. His replicated skill was Heaven's Shaker, and he had 0 out of 6,000 experience. The thugs, with Karina still among them, turned their attention to Tsuyoshi. Karina, shocked and relieved, whispered her brother's name. The main gangster, despite the carnage, recovered his composure and sneered at Tsuyoshi, noting that he had finally decided to show up. He then mocked Tsuyoshi, questioning why he looked so angry, as if he wasn't paying his debts. He added that he doesn't need a disabled sister like Karina. The gangster was unaware of the terrifying power he was about to face. Tsuyoshi immediately launched his attack. The moment the prominent gangster opened his mouth to speak, Tsuyoshi struck him with a blindingly fast, shadowy blow, shattering his sunglasses and sending blood flying, including one of his teeth. The gangster was sent spinning across the room, pieces of debris scattering around him. A notification briefly flashed, confirming Tsuyoshi's focused power. Tsuyoshi's strongest body part was his legs. They were strengthened and his movement speed increased. The main gangster landed hard, groaning in pain as objects flew from the table. The henchman guarding Karina cried out to his boss. The larger bald gangster, consumed by a blind rage, charged at Tsuyoshi, roaring that he was a brat. Tsuyoshi met the charge with fierce, cold fury, ready to engage the enraged thug. The bald gangster's enraged charge was suddenly halted. Tsuyoshi met the punch head-on, delivering a counter-blow to the gangster's torso with immense force, sending the burly man flying across the room and shouting in pain that his arm was broken. The main gangster, still reeling, saw the defiance and was enraged, shouting that no one had ever defied him. He then recognized the gravity of the situation and pulled out a gun. He exclaimed that defying the Blue Snake team was a first and leveled the weapon at Tsuyoshi, ordering him to die. A gunshot roared, and a bullet sped through the air towards Tsuyoshi. Karina, watching in horror, screamed no as the golden bullet spun towards her brother. In a blink, the bullet was stopped in mid-air, having been caught cleanly by Tsuyoshi's bare hand. Karina's eyes widened in utter disbelief as she saw it happen in front of her eyes. The gangster's, equally shocked, gasped as he wondered if he had just caught the bullet with his bare hands. He exclaimed that it was impossible. Even with his veins still bulging, Tsuyoshi's response was simple, a declaration that echoed with newfound power. He was, after all, a hero already. A system message confirmed his current advantage. which stated that his hands were his strongest body part and could not be harmed by ordinary weapons. The three remaining gangsters were now terrified, recognizing the ominous truth. They stammered in unison, acknowledging the hero. A nurse and a security guard rushed down the hallway, the nurse explaining breathlessly that some loan sharks were threatening a patient and her brother, and urging the guard to hurry. Tsuyoshi's confrontation was about to be interrupted by the arriving authorities. The nurse, standing beside the security guard, was speechless as soon as she was already on the scene, looking at the injured loan sharks instead of Tsuyoshi. The leader of the gang requested that Tsuyoshi repay the loan in a lump sum as soon as possible, warning him that if he delayed repayment, their young boss, who was also a hero, might not remain silent. The gangsters, now defeated and bruised, offered a forced and humble apology for interrupting him and announced they would be leaving immediately, quickly retreating. Tsuyoshi watched them go, and they also politely bowed their hands as a sign that they were leaving for the nurse. The main gangster was clearly furious, thinking that the boy had become a hero. He realized he had to report this to his boss, otherwise their plan to abduct the sister would fail. The gangster revealed that his boss was a level 100 warrior, and he was confident they could defeat Tsuyoshi, who appeared to be a mere trainee. Karina was relieved that the defeated loan sharks were no longer a threat. Tsuyoshi turned back to Karina, holding the crumpled contract. He apologized, telling her he was sorry he hadn't been able to see her as much as he'd have liked. Tsuyoshi, sitting beside his sister, explained that the loan sharks had a point. If they didn't pay them off soon, the blue snakes would be back. He confessed that he had spent the last few days trying to figure out how to pay them back, but assured his sister not to worry, as he was now a hero. Karina, seeing his hero ID badge, was shocked to learn that he had really become a hero. Tsuyoshi confirmed that he was currently an intern and would be officially recognized once he went to the cave that day. Tsuyoshi revealed his desperation. He had borrowed $60,000 from the Blue Snake Gang for Karina's treatment. He lamented that earning money steadily in this world, even as an official hero, would take a considerable amount of time. His ultimate solution was to sell all his hero equipment. He knew that the cooldown for the Boundless Passage ended tonight, which meant he could resume his accelerated training. He looked forward to being an official hero. Meanwhile, in the Hero Alliance meeting point, a mystical-looking clearing with heroes gathered. Gaia, the level 9 warrior with 1200 combat power, stood among them and asked if everyone was present. The team, now including Tsuyoshi with his unique advantages, was ready to embark on their first cave mission. Gaia began his address to the gathered hero trainees, announcing that day they would all be tested on their skills to determine if they were ready to become heroes officially. He immediately laid down the rules. The most important one was that they had to give him all the hero equipment they found in the cave. The trainees, looking intimidated, hesitantly replied that they understood. Tsuyoshi, however, understood the dark truth of the Hero Union. He had heard of these things, suggesting the Union was turning a blind eye to the exploitation, though he decided it didn't matter much since there wasn't much to be found in a low-level cave anyway. Gaia continued, assuring them that he was a level 9 warrior, and as long as they followed his instructions, they would have no problem passing the exam. He then revealed the fee. In return for making them official heroes, he would charge each of them 20,000 yen. The stunned trainees could only stammer a response, while Gaia, with a stern expression, demanded if they understood. The group of hopeful heroes weakly conceded, acknowledging the steep price and the exploitative nature of their hero's journey. Tsuyoshi raised his hand, challenging Gaia, and pointedly asked why they had to pay him an additional fee when he was already getting all the equipment found in the cave, asserting that this practice would leave them with no money for themselves. One of the intimidated trainees quickly pulled Tsuyoshi aside, warning him not to go against the instructor, as Gaia was a member of the powerful guild Crazy Wolf. Tsuyoshi then realized the source of Gaia's audacity. He had the guild's backing, which was why he was asking for money so brazenly. Despite the risk, Tsuyoshi refused to be exploited, clenching his fist and internally vowing that he wouldn't pay a man like Gaia to help the strong and crush the weak, even if he had to die for it. Gaia spoke up and said, "It's because those are his rules." Gaia, with a menacing smile, confirmed they were, then dismissed Tsuyoshi, saying that if he was too poor to pay 20,000 yen, he should sign up for a solo test. He mocked the hero for not understanding that level of logic, and warned him that he didn't care what happened to him for provoking him. The other trainees were aghast, whispering that a solo test was rumored to have never been passed by an intern, and even the strongest heroes wouldn't enter a cave alone. They thought Tsuyoshi was a fool for incurring the examiner's wrath over a mere 20,000 yen. Tsuyoshi seized the opportunity offered by Gaia's anger, confirming that he could sign up for a solo test, which he found convenient. At the hero meeting spot, a man in a business suit, who resembled the official from the measurement test, likely the examiner, spotted Tsuyoshi and asked if he was serious about his decision. He keeps telling him he must be mistaken to sign up for a solo test. He even tried to confirm his decision with a final check, reiterating that no one had ever passed it and asking if going into a Class C cave alone wasn't a suicide mission for a new trainee. Tsuyoshi, however, was unfazed by the warnings. He thanked the man for his advice but firmly stated there was no doubt about his choice and requested to be allowed to go. The man could only watch in astonishment as Tsuyoshi turned and walked away, proclaiming that he would be going in now as a golden aura of power pulsed around him in the portal. The man exclaimed to himself that it was insane. The solo mission, driven by Tsuyoshi's desperation and newfound power, was set to begin. Tsuyoshi stood at the entrance of the Class C forest-type cave, a status window confirming his solo test application and the recommended average combat power of 600 or more. He looked around the foreboding, twisted forest environment, noting that he had only seen caves after heroes had cleared out the darkness, wondering if this was what an original cave looked like. Before he could take a step, a level 3 dark goblin, possessing a combat value of 640, lunged at him in a surprise attack, throwing a dagger. Tsuyoshi, unfazed, caught the dagger in midair. He then checked his stats, which confirmed his superior combat value of 6,400. He scoffed at the goblin, saying a surprise attack with that level of power wouldn't hurt him. The surprised goblin let out a small yelp, realizing the disparity in their power. Tsuyoshi acknowledged the challenge, musing that this dark goblin was quite strong, before continuing his way into the cave, dagger in hand, ready for the real test. Tsuyoshi stood in the eerie forest cave entrance, his body crackling with blue energy. He spoke with cold fury, declaring that compared to his 6,400 fighting power, the goblin was nothing but dust. He realized that the experience gained from real-world enemies was not even half of that of their counterparts in the other world, confirming why heroes suffered from such slow growth. He looked at his experience, which was only 20 out of 6,000. Suddenly, multiple dark goblins materialized and surrounded him. Tsuyoshi, unfazed, challenged them not to sneak up on him and to come at him all at once. The goblins charged, but it was precisely what Tsuyoshi wanted. With a grim smile, the hero's new dark goblin set instantly manifested, covering his face in a black, shadowy hood. He thought the timing was perfect. His solo test had just become a terrifying, systematic slaughter. Tsuyoshi screamed as he fully unleashed the dark goblin set's ability, roaring tentacles. The terrifying skill was fully activated, creating a massive explosion of red and black energy that utterly wiped out the surrounding level 3 dark goblins. Tsuyoshi, still standing at the center of the destruction, defiantly shouted for any remaining enemies to come one, come all. Meanwhile, back at the meeting point, the examiner checked his tablet, remarking nervously that it had been almost an hour, and that if Tsuyoshi had stuck it out this long on his own, he had done more than enough. He scoffed, wondering aloud if the rookie wasn't afraid of anything, saying that no one in their right mind would apply for a solo test, and that the union was going to get rid of the test anyway. He smugly concluded that the obituary of the new guy would be in the books in a few minutes. However, the tablet gave him a shock. His eyes widened as the screen updated. The results of the solo test were in. Tsuyoshi Tsukishiro passed. The impossible had happened, and Tsuyoshi's raw power had earned him official hero status. Tsuyoshi, standing before the startled examiner, was covered in grime and blood, a physical testament to the ferocity of the solo test. His current status was a level 4 warrior with a combat value of 6th Ardvero. With a determined, serious expression, he simply asked the examiner if there was a place nearby where he could wash up, and he had accumulated 966,000 experience. The intense life-or-death mission was complete, and the hero's primary concern was now simply to recover from his ordeal.
The powerful surge of golden energy, seemingly from the portal, was once again directed at Gaia, the hero trainer, who was still at the meeting point with the other trainees. Gaia was startled, thinking to himself that if he hadn't been there, the others would have been dead a long time ago, and that one of the trainees managed to become a hero without his help. He muttered that 20,000 yen was too cheap for the service he provided. Gaia then turned and tried to assert his authority with the other trainees, asking if they were complaining about the price when he had even offered to support them with healing magic. The trainee immediately challenged him, asking if he didn't instruct them not to interfere. The trainee further complained that this was their first time entering a cave, with hardly any explanation, so it was outrageous for Gaia to get angry at them. The other trainees silenced the trainee, assuring him he had already passed the test. Gaia looked at the trainee, and he was then reminded that at his level he should be charged 40,000 yen, and that he was being let off with only 20,000 yen. Gaia then looked down at his phone, which was receiving a call from the Hero Exam Center. He snapped at the caller, telling them to get to the point because he was busy. The news struck Gaia like a bolt of lightning, freezing him in disbelief. He exclaimed in utter disbelief, dismissing the notion as utter nonsense. As his mind reeled, unable to reconcile the impossible, he wondered if that guy had truly passed the solo test. Gaia approached Tsuyoshi as he washed his hands, sharply questioning how he managed to pass the solo test and demanding an explanation. Tsuyoshi scrubbed his face, oblivious to Gaia's disgust. He informed him that he was, at best, a level 4 rookie. Gaia couldn't fathom Tsuyoshi's solo test victory. With arms crossed and a scowl on his face, he demanded to know if the rookie had resorted to high-grade items, as no newcomer had ever passed before. Tsuyoshi remained unfazed by Gaia's wild speculation. He casually brushed his hair back, water splashing around him as he quipped, a hint of sarcasm in his voice, that just because something hadn't happened before didn't mean it was impossible.
Perhaps, he mused, it was due to the near heart attack of a 20,000 charge. Gaia erupted, grabbing Tsuyoshi's shirt and shouting, demanding to know if he was being mocked. His voice, thick with insulted fury, warned Tsuyoshi to answer before he'd regret it, reminding him he was a member of the Lazy Wolf. Tsuyoshi, with a face as blank as a forgotten grocery list, tilted his head and declared that a guild boasting merely level 9 and a combat power of 1200 barely registered on his radar. He probably had more significant dust bunnies under his bed. Gaia's fury ignited, his fist clenching as he was engulfed in a roaring inferno. How dare anyone insult him, as his voice boomed, demanding to know who they thought they were. In a flash of motion, Tsuyoshi deflected Gaia's powerful punch, not with a dodge but with a surprising stillness. His unyielding hands simply interrupted the force of her strike. His eyes ablaze, Tsuyoshi's voice cut through the air as he asked if they intended to beat him to death with level 9 fists. Gaia, trembling with sweat running down his face, realized with disbelief that his opponent possessed such power and speed, attributing it to being level 4. Gaia slammed his fist down, retreating as if he'd finally had enough of Tsuyoshi. Without a moment's hesitation, Gaia drew his dagger. Tsuyoshi's hands shot up, a silent plea for calm as he reeled in shock, imploring Gaia to wait a minute. Gaia's eyes flared crimson, his dagger poised to strike Tsuyoshi. He demanded to know what secrets Tsuyoshi kept hidden. Tsuyoshi instinctively shielded his arm as the dagger crackled with an ominous spark. A system notification flashed, confirming the activation of the Dark Goblin set, its defensive properties and his ultimate physique. Gaia stared at his dagger, a profound surprise etched on his face as he observed its sudden deterioration. His eyes widened in disbelief. The blade was broken, yet the impact had felt nothing like a body. Gaia confronted Tsuyoshi, her gaze sharp, suggesting he was concealing high-grade equipment. Tsuyoshi, taken aback, offered no reply, his silence a testament to her accurate suspicion. Tsuyoshi's eyes widened in alarm. He worried he had accidentally revealed his ability, knowing it would be troublesome if people from his original world discovered his secret. Gaia fixed him with an evil smile, her interest piqued by whatever he possessed. His eyes burned with a malevolent desire as he demanded to know what he had. Gripping his worn dagger, he insisted it must be something truly valuable, then pressed further, asking if he had unearthed it from the cave or if it had been stolen. A shiver snaked down Tsuyoshi's spine, and his lips puckered as a cold gust of air swept over him. He blurted that he was scared, though frankly it looked more like he'd just swallowed a particularly sour lemon. Tsuyoshi clutched his side, groaning dramatically that if it weren't for that shabby dagger, it could have been dangerous. Gaia simply stared, bewildered at the perfectly unharmed man who stood directly in front of him, clearly overreacting for dramatic effect. His attention was suddenly snared as a voice apologized for the wait. The examiner assessed him in the solo test. The examiner happily announced that Tsukashiro-san was there for identity verification, and with that, he was officially a hero. Tsuyoshi politely replied that he understood and would be there right away. Gaia, observing quietly from behind Tsuyoshi and the examiner, declared that it had been a lifesaver. He then warned him not to pull that kind of stunt in front of the staff again. Gaia's eyes were wide and his teeth were bared in a smile, giving him an appearance of malevolence. Tsuyoshi felt something while the examiner was talking. He slightly turned his head on Gaia and thought to himself that thanks to the system, his combat power was higher than a regular level 4, but facing high-level enemies was still quite troublesome. That night, as Tsuyoshi lay on his bed, the moon's gentle glow filled his apartment. He realized with a start that he had inadvertently caught Gaia's eye. A fleeting image of a cat-eared companion danced in his mind, but he quickly dismissed it, knowing there were no such beings in this world. His level was still too low. He needed to remain inconspicuous. Two figures in black robes were stealthily lurking outside his apartment. One of them asked if that was the place as they got near the door. He added that after he broke down the door, he would use the magic to immobilize them while he knocked them out and took them away. Donning a black hood and cape, the figure was also armed with a long stick, its tip adorned with a striking red gem. A formidable member of the Lazy Wolf Guild appeared, a level 10 mage boasting a combat power of 3,500. Gaia was revealed, a wicked smile on his face, his long tongue extended as he ran his finger along the sharp edge of his dagger. His companion, clutching a stick topped with a fiery red gem, hushed him, warning that loud noises could attract unwanted attention. He added that first they would break the chains with magic and asked Gaia if he was ready. With shared wicked grins, they knew their schemes were set in motion. Intruders observed the fiery heart of a crimson gem, its once stable flame now beginning to succumb to a strange, inexplicable melt. From behind the door, Tsuyoshi burst forth, his eyes burning crimson with rage, a wooden stick gripped tight in his hand. Gaia and his companion were taken aback by his sudden furious appearance. The system's notification blared, unveiling Tsuyoshi's formidable profile. A level 4 warrior, he was clad in the menacing Dark Goblin set. His special skill, Roar Tentacle, promised an unsettling display of power. Wielding a club, he possessed no inherent skills, yet a duplicated ability, Heaven Shaker pulsated within him. With a combat power of 6-400, Tsuyoshi was a force to be reckoned with. He gritted his teeth, his gaze sharp as he glared at the two intruders. To Gaia, he remarked on their surprising swiftness. With a powerful smash of his wooden stick, Tsuyoshi unleashed his duplicated Heaven Shaker skill. A massive wave of orange fusion energy erupted, sending debris flying in every direction. Driven by a furious rage, he declared that even a level 10 mage accompanied his opponent. Despite his own combat power of 3,500, he emphasized the 6-stage level difference, acknowledging the significant disadvantage of a confrontation. Tsuyoshi believed combat power offered a precise measure of a hero's capabilities. Despite his own combat power of 6,400, his level was a mere 4. He knew he could handle opponents within 2 levels of his own, but facing a level 10 adversary, even one with lower combat power, would be a struggle due to the significant level gap. These thoughts raced through his mind as he observed the 2 high-level intruders before him.